When Bradford City said we don't want you, I had to go find a job. My dad got me a job at Manningham Mills. I'm thinking to myself, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life? When my dad said, I've got you a trial at Park Avenue, I'm thinking, what? I said, listen, no, I said, I'm not going to Park Avenue. My father said, do you want to be a footballer? I said, of course I do. He said, right, well, go have the trial. Arsenal had been watching me and they wanted me to go and play at Arsenal. Basically, London wasn't for me. The season that had I signed for them, that season, they did the double. As I said, it's the only thing I've regretted in my career. I should have stuck it out. Yeah. So we loosed the whole city on the Saturday. Lee Paling got sent off, and on the Monday I got sacked.
It's fickle, isn't it? Isn't it a fickle industry?
Trying to be clever. He's messing about. So I said, Dino, you see that staircase there? I said, go sit on it.
They won't let me play.
People don't realise the goal he scored. When people talk about best goal you've ever seen,
well, lost it over that guy's head and follows it. Unreal, isn't it? Terry Dolan, welcome to the Greatness on Demand podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Wow.
This is a good one. I'm excited.
Terry Dolan.
I'm excited because obviously we know what we're going to go into in the story, because I know your relationship, what happened, what it meant. We're not going to talk about that right now.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to get into it. I think viewers are as well, because I'm sure many know, or many will know, I reckon, so much of your relationship, right?
Well, yeah, they probably don't know, but I won't be sat here now if it wasn't through him, so I'm looking forward to it.
So look, first question we ask everyone on this pod. Terry, how would you define greatness? What do you believe are the key characteristic traits that make somebody great?
It's difficult to answer in one sentence, but I think one of the first things is believe in yourself. And I think then also you've got to believe in other people around you, people, your elders who are giving you advice. Don't be frightened of taking that advice.
So would you say like your environment plays a big part in shaping you then?
Very much so, yes.
Yeah. Why would you say that?
Well, you can't do everything on your own, can you? You've got to have people around you. And being in a team sport, you have got people around you, so you've got to believe in them.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think it's the same in everything in life, isn't it? I think even away from football, it's like obviously me mentoring people in business. I hate it when people say they're self-made. There's no such thing.
No.
There's no one that's ever self-made. Business, sport, there's not, is there?
No.
There's always someone who's giving you that guidance or your environment that shaped the person who you are, isn't it?
It is, and I think particularly in team sports, it's even more apparent.
Yeah.
You know, a tennis player or a golfer has to think about himself more than anything else. Footballers, cricketers have got to believe in the whole team.
Yeah. So look, take us all the way back, Terry, right?
Oh God, this is a long journey.
All the way back. Take us back to the beginning. The young lad growing up in Bradford. What shaped the man sitting in front of us today? What do we need to know about the earliest years of you growing up?
Well, if I can think back that far, there were a lot of ups and downs, probably more downs than ups.
Tell us how so.
But I was, from being 4 or 5 years old, I was a Bradford City supporter because my granddad used to take me to Valley Parade. My dad was playing sort of reasonable standard of football at the time, so it was my granddad who took me to the games. And then when my dad finished playing, the three of us went together. And I'll never forget standing behind the Bradford end in sort of 1956, 57, and thinking, I'd like to be a part of this. My first competitive game, and this is where the downs started, which was my first game, I played for a school called St Anne's in Bradford, and my first competitive game was against Bowling Back Lane. The Bowling Back Lane team included Kenny Hibbert and Terry Hibbert. Kenny was the same as me. We were both 7 years old and we were playing in the under-11 league. So basically we were 4 years ahead of ourselves.
Was that the Kenny Hibbert or was that Wolves?
Yes. Yeah. And Terry was 3 years older. But what do you think the score was in our first competitive game?
I'm going to say you got trashed.
We got trashed 11-1.
Right. Did you score the one?
No. But then I'm thinking to myself, well, at least I'm playing.
Yeah.
And as I say, that was the downside of things to start with.
But you said you was younger than the lads, didn't you? So you playing.
We were playing against 10-year-olds, basically.
10-year-olds,
That's a big gap from 7 to 10, isn't it?
Very much so, yes.
What position? I mean, what shouldn't I say? What position? They wouldn't have position, did they?
They didn't. Well, they didn't. But in my early days, I was classed as what they called an inside forward.
Right.
So more of an attacking midfield player in today's game. I mean, when you talk about today's game, when they now talk about false nines and this, that, and the other, I'm a dinosaur in that respect. But I enjoyed it. From then on, it was a case of trying to get better and better. I went to grammar school. The grammar school I went to was part of St Bede's initially.
That's where I went, St Bede's.
But
in Heaton.
But St Bede's became full. They couldn't take any more scholars. And I was one of the first people to go to Cardinal Hinsley Grammar School.
Okay.
But for the 2 years between 11 and 13, I played for St Bede's.
Right. It was still an all-boys school then, was it?
Oh, yes.
All boys when I was there. But like St Bede's, why they sent me, mum and dad, sorry, no chase, because of the football.
Yes.
There were really good footballs at St Bede's, wasn't it?
Yeah, we won the league in the 2 seasons that I played there, yes. Yeah. But then when Cardinal Hinsley was built and opened, a headmaster came from a public school in Blackburn and he banned all football. And we had to play rugby union, which was a bit of a shock to the system.
Right.
But during that time, I managed to play for Canterbury Youth Club on a Saturday morning, just to make sure I was still playing football.
Yeah.
And things developed from there. While I was playing there, I then went to start playing for Eccleshill United. And a Bradford City scout saw me in one of the games, invited me for a trial, and I was going to be signing as an apprentice in 1967. I was halfway through my A-levels at Cardinal Hinsley. The manager at the time was Willie Watson. He got sacked and Jimmy Wheeler took over, and Jimmy Wheeler didn't want me. So I'd arranged to leave school, couldn't go back to school, and I'm thinking, well, what do I do now?
What were you like in school? Would you listen? Did you get on with your lessons? Yeah.
Yes, but I was more interested in the sports that we were playing. I played a lot of badminton at the time, and that was my life, sport, football. I'd go cross-country running, and that stood me in good stead for the future, my future career.
What was you shaping around that time? So your mum and dad, your parents, did you have any kind of like mentor, inspiration around you? Maybe your father, anyone else?
It was my father more than anybody, yes. Because as I said, he played sort of a reasonable amateur level.
How was he a big impact on your life then?
Well, when Bradford City said, we don't want you, I had to go find a job. My dad got me a job at Manningham Mills, the textile company, and I was humping cloth around from room to room for about 6 months, which got me a bit stronger because I've always been fairly slim. And I'm thinking to myself, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life?
But while you was working, did you actually think I could be a professional footballer?
I always had belief in myself, yes. So I didn't have a problem there. And the fact that Bradford City wanted to sign me as an apprentice, stuck in my head that they think I can do it, so I've got to believe that. Yeah. And then, as I say, my father persuaded me to go and have this trial at Bradford Park Avenue. Now, bearing in mind, I'd been a City supporter for all those previous years. When my dad said, I've got you a trial at Park Avenue, I'm thinking, what? Because in those days, Bradford City and Park Avenue were like Rangers and Celtic are today.
How dare you?
If you played for one, you hated the other. And I said, listen, no, I said, I'm not going to Park Avenue. My father said, do you want to be a footballer? I said, of course I do. He said, right, well, go have the trial. So I turn up for the training session on the Tuesday night. We go through a few things. They said to me, right, come back on Thursday, we'll have another session on Thursday. I go back on the Thursday night, and the coach of the youth team at Park Avenue said to me after we'd finished training, have you ever played centre-half? And I'm thinking, I'm a midfield player, I'm an inside forward. I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, we think that you might be able to fit in there. Now, would you believe the game on the Saturday in the Northern Intermediate League coming up was against Bradford City? And I'm not going to say, no, I'm not playing, because that would have they'd have just said, right, well, off you go.
Yes,
so I'm picked to play at centre-half. We draw 2-2, and I score one of the goals as a centre-half. 6 weeks later, Bradford Park Avenue offered me a professional contract, and I signed for Park Avenue.
Nice. Back in the day then, with the pro contracts, roughly, what were the wages, but then how did it work back then? What were it for Park Ave?
My first contract for Bradford Park Avenue was £15 a week.
What were you making in the turns, the textiles?
Working?
Probably £5 to £10.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. So what did you think that first time you got your contract of £15 a week?
Well, the fact that they offered me a contract full stop was, that's it, I'm not bothered about it. You can give me nothing, but I want to play.
Yeah. And did you train like 2 hours a day? Or is that just the same? Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, the good thing about Park Avenue was, in those days, Yorkshire played cricket at the other side of the main stand. So when the season had finished, I played there for 2 seasons at Park Avenue. But when the season finished in the summer, we would go and work on the scoreboard for Yorkshire games at the cricket ground. So I got a bit of a love for cricket as well at that time.
You loved it. So going back then, when you're playing at the level of Park Ave, are you ever thinking, Terry, that you can move up the rank? Are you thinking you're good enough to move up and you want to push even further, moving the rankings? Was there a pathway even laid out for you back then, or are you just thinking, play the game, someone will pick me up?
Well, the fact that I got into the first team pretty quickly after signing a contract.
How old would you have been here at this point?
I was 18/19. And the fact that I was playing regularly in the first team, I mean, I played in the same team at that time as people like Mel Hopkins, who was a Welsh international, Ray Charnley, who was an England international, and this was Park Avenue playing in the old 4th division.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for the next 2 seasons, we finished near the bottom of the league, and Bradford Park Avenue ended up going out of the league. Now, during that time came about the only time I've ever regretted doing anything during my career. Because I'd been watched by 1 or 2 other clubs, Park Avenue didn't tell me, but they kept it quiet that other clubs were interested, because they were hoping that the more people were interested, the more money they would get for me. I ended up going to Huddersfield Town for £3,250.
Right.
But before I went to Huddersfield, 6 months before, Arsenal had been watching me, and they wanted me to go and play at Arsenal.
Wow.
In fact, they took me down for a 3-week trial period, and, well, you wouldn't believe how it worked out. I was there for 2 weeks. I was in digs on my own in Enfield. I was having to get up out of the bed to go from the digs down to Highbury, and then a bus from Highbury to the training ground. So I was leaving at 7:30 in the morning, 2 sessions of training because it was pre-season, getting back to the digs at 7:30 at night, thinking, is this for me?
Yeah.
Basically, London wasn't for me. So I decided, but Bertie Mee was the manager, Don Howe was the coach, and they were big time. Were Arsenal.
Who were in the team then at that point? There were some big players then.
Bob Wilson in goal, Charlie George up front,
Oh, wow.
Bob McNabb, Frank McClintock. I mean, the season that had I signed for them, that season they did the double.
Right. Wow.
And I've always said to people, I should have stayed there. I should have stuck it out.
And when you say, do you believe though? You say that now, but obviously, potentially when we get to it, you two wouldn't have met. Do you know what I mean? It could have gone a different pathway.
Oh yeah.
So everything, I guess, for a reason, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So when you say about Arsenal then, and it wasn't for you, was that just living in London, the commute into it, or was it the setup? Was it just the commuting?
Just the commuting. Yeah. Definitely.
So it wasn't the homesickness or like that. It was just
Well, it probably was a bit of homesickness.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest as well, at that time I'd just met my wife-to-be.
Right.
So that had a little bit of
also she was in Bradford.
But yes, a little bit of a bearing on things. She said, no, it wasn't me that's caused you to come back. But but no, it's, as I said, it's the only thing I've regretted in my career. I should have stuck it out.
Wow.
And she's told me that herself anyway.
Yeah.
Wow. When you went on in your career, what would you say, because I want to get into your management, and before we get to there, during your playing career then, that was what you've just said, well, probably the hardest thing in a sense of, a regret. So let's just flip that then. What's the highlight, would you say, of your sporting career as a footballer then?
Well, when I went to Huddersfield Town, they just got promoted to the First Division, the Premier League as it is now. It took me 12 months to get into the swing of things. They put me on a weights programme because I was slim.
How old would you be in Huddersfield?
So I was 20.
20.
Yeah. And I did a lot of weight training, and that it didn't put a lot of bulk on me, but it made me stronger. And
was you a centre half then, or a centre midfield player?
I was still a midfield player, but Huddersfield had seen me as a centre back as well.
Right.
And when, after 6 months of training with them and playing in the reserves, I gradually developed into a centre half.
Right.
I mean, you just played with 4 at the back in those days,
yeah.
So I was one of the 2 centre backs.
Yeah.
But the fact that it took me 12 months to adjust made me better when I did get into the first team. And in my first full season there, I was very, very well. You talk to any youngster in those days, and when I say what happened, we played Man United in 1971-72 season at Old Trafford in front of 55,000 people, and the team at Man United included Best, Law and Charlton.
Not too bad.
So I'm thinking, and I actually had to mark George Best in this particular game.
Wow.
They beat us, but he didn't score. So
you did your job, mate.
Well, I tried to do it. 3 weeks later, we played West Ham in the FA Cup at Huddersfield. We beat them 4-2. I've been moved into midfield by this time. I score one of the goals to beat them 4-2, and in the West Ham team was Peters, Hurst and Bobby Moore. So to play against 6 players like that in the space of 3 weeks, I'm thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah. Did you ever think when you played against them, what were the biggest difference between them and other players you might have played with? Or do you think you could have got in a team like that yourself?
Yes. Yeah. But in those days, everybody was a different type of player. I mean, people talked about George Best. As I say, I played against him twice. He was probably the best player that I'd played against. But not particularly because he was skillful, but because he was, how can I describe it? You never knew what he was going to do next, right? You could tackle him and you'd knock him over, but before you could think what you were going to do next, he was up on his feet and he was off. His balance was unbelievable, and people don't realise that. So, to play against somebody like that, to play against Bobby Moore, I know he was at the other end of the field, but talk about a cool dude. He was different class. As
a centre-half, then, would you say, is it difficult as a centre-half to more so go against a player, not strong, but who reads a game well? Is that the hardest thing, sir?
Yeah. I mean, when I played against Wolves, I made my debut for Huddersfield against Wolves at the Molineux, and Kenny Hibbert was in the Wolves team that time. I scored one of the goals, and I was playing centre-half, but I played against one of my most difficult opponents, which is Derek Dugan, right? Big centre-forward. And that was only because he was all arms and elbows and smashing me all over the face. And
back then could get away with it as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's probably players like him would be less difficult, would you say, against someone like Georgie Best? Because the physicality, yes, is tough, but mentally, is it draining to actually figure out where they're going to go?
Very much so, yeah. But a bigger, stronger centre-half would have probably dealt with Dugan better than I did.
Yeah.
Because I was immature and slim. Yeah. I was more of a thinking footballer than a physical football.
If you looked at today's game, Terry, and I've noticed, obviously we know it's a completely different game. If you compare yourself to they're not going to be exactly like how you are, but if you compare yourself to a centre half today, who would that be? Would you say?
In today's game, ooh, very difficult to pick somebody, but Van Dijk, to a degree.
As a footballing, passing centre half.
Yeah. And being a force, like, because obviously you're tall, aren't you?
Yes.
Well, how tall would you be? Would you be still taller then?
I was 6'1", yeah.
Yeah. Scary, wasn't it? What were you like against 6'1" defenders? Are you thinking movement as well? Because you were strong anyway.
Yeah, but
your movement, your reading the game were just as good, wasn't it?
Yeah, my movement had to get away because I wasn't quick. So I got told. Well, I didn't get told really. I just fucking, you find a way to get in behind people.
Yeah.
And the only way I could get in behind people was by going short to go long, or going long to go short, or back in and get fouls and bring people into play.
Yeah.
But I probably like the more physicality of it than playing against somebody who was quick.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they just, as you say, you won't beat them in a race. No. So the only way that you can beat them, it's like Terry says there with Dolan, he's elbowing him, smashing him all over.
Yeah.
So probably Terry likes to play with somebody who plays in the hole, or number 10 as they call it now, because then he can read them what they're going to do. He can go all the way with them, or he can pass them on to his midfield players. So it's different types. There's different types.
Yeah, I because I ended up playing in midfield, I was more known as a probably thinking type of centre back rather than a crash bang wallop centre back.
Yeah. Would you come forward as well? Back then, obviously, they used to just keep the lines, didn't they?
No, you just
stay away.
Left that to midfield players.
Yeah.
But the other thing was, and this is where, again, they moved me into midfield in Huddersfield later on, I would like to play the ball forward.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me going about the game today where it's sideways, backwards, and get the keeper involved all the time.
Yeah.
You're only going to score goals if you get the ball in the other half and the other team's penalty area.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how the game just changes like that? Because when I watch football with you're always complaining about it. You always say to me, goes, watch this now, pass it at the back, and they do, don't they?
Well, you know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's just boring.
Yeah.
It's just boring to play. And like, trouble is, like when we played, it was 4-4-2. And the ball would come up to you, get hold of it. Trouble is now, if you're a centre forward now, they play 4-3-3 or they play whatever. They play one up front. And the centre forward hardly moves now. All they do is stand between the two centre halves, and then when the ball goes in the wide areas, they get in the box. So there's no point making a run now, because as you say, midfield player is going to get it and they go, I'll roll it to the right back. Do you know what I mean? I'll keep the ball. Well, it's nonsense for me. It is the way it is. I blame Pep Guardiola for it.
I'm going to ask that question. When do you think it changed? Do you think it was when
Pep on it?
Came in? Yeah.
Pep's changed it.
Possibly.
Do you think it'll change again?
Do you think it'll change again?
I think it's got to.
Yeah.
It's got to,
because we talk a lot about VAR, we talk about a lot of things like that, which I don't agree with.
I mean, they have that many stats these days in the game of professional football. It cannot be right if the players who have got most touches of the ball in a game are the two centre backs and the goalkeeper between them.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. It just takes the joy and the fun out of the game, doesn't it, watching it as well?
I like to see somebody doing something different.
Yeah.
But there are too many teams at the moment all playing the same way.
Yeah. There's so many wingers I find as well. When they get the ball, they're looking for the next pass to go back and not actually going.
Well, they're not taking them on, are they? Getting to the bar line.
And I'm going to say that before, when we had Sarcevic on one of those podcasts before, I was going to say to him, the only player we've seen at Bradford City, and you'll know Terry from going to the game, is Teo. So Teo came from Palace on loan. He's the only player we've had probably in a long time, when he gets the ball, he's looking to take on, and that's how we've got many of our goals. So it's just proof, like, he's an attacking player, whereas everyone else will get the ball, they could whip it in, but then they're looking for a defender who's probably just waiting there, like the left back, if you're a left winger, and he'll pass it back there to then. It's boring. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they could whip it in when they're in a wide area, but most of the teams these days just play with one striker.
Yeah.
Now, it's difficult to hit that one striker, and it's difficult for that one striker to be here, there and everywhere.
Yeah.
You need, well, again, without being a dinosaur, ideally you need two strikers who can take the weight off each other.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if someone came back in the game and actually put the old-fashioned football, you know what I mean, but still the same level of fitness that footballers have, and still their skill, but that formation.
Yeah.
That'd be so interesting.
But I always said this: if Pep Guardiola went 4-4-2, I think everybody else would.
Yeah, someone would follow. Yeah, they would. They'd
Some
follow
of
the
the,
trend.
they just follow.
Yeah.
They just say, "Oh, do you know what he's doing it? Oh, I'm going to do it." Then.
I think
But then it's more exciting for the game.
Yeah.
But like you become a manager, did you know as a professional footballer that you wanted to go into management? And what age did you start thinking about doing that? Because you had a good football career.
Yeah, I mean, when I left Huddersfield Town, I was at Huddersfield for 6 seasons, and when I left there, I went back to Bradford City. And in my first season there, we got promoted, so that was an up compared to Downs previous to that, because we got relegated twice at Huddersfield. But then the following season, we got relegated again. And just a little story about that. Stafford Egginbotham was the chairman at the time, and when we got promoted, he'd promised the team a holiday abroad for a week, but they didn't have the money.
Is this at Bradford, Terry?
This is at Bradford City, yeah. And everybody's looking forward to going away for a week, and then it didn't happen right at the last minute. Stafford said to us, and everybody knew what Stafford was like, "Don't worry, boys, I'll take you all next season." So we're thinking, oh yeah, it's easy saying that. The next season, we got relegated. So we're thinking, well, there's no way we're going to be able to go now. What did Stafford do? Stuck to his word and took us to Magaluf for a week.
Yeah. Wow.
Incredible.
Did you? So, like Dean said, did you see a route into management then?
So at that time, my father and one of his friends had been helping a Sunday League team, and they asked me if I'd go and take a couple of training sessions for them.
Oh wow, what, Sunday League?
Yeah, prior to that I'd taken my coaching badge, my prelim coaching badge, because it was something that I obviously had in mind when I finished playing.
And would the clubs push you to do that as well? Would they advise you to go?
Yeah, they were happy for me to do that. So they had to set up this new team. They had a team that they were linked with, but it fell apart. They couldn't afford to run it. So they set up this new team and asked me if I'd become the sort of coach. And they would train on a Thursday night and then play on a Sunday. And although I was still playing as a professional, I thought, yeah, okay, I'll help you. So we had to start in Division 5 of the Bradford Sunday League as a new team. For the next 5 seasons, we won each division consecutively and got into the Premier League, the Bradford Sunday League Premier League.
Right.
So I thought to myself, well, if I can do it with amateur players, I think I might be able to do it with professionals.
Okay.
So it got to, I was just leaving Bradford City, my contract ran out, and I ended up going to Rochdale. I was going to take my full badge, and I'm thinking to myself, am I sure I want to do this? And people kept saying, well, you've done it with East Bowling Unity Club, surely you can, give it a go. So Trevor Cherry, who I'd played with at Huddersfield Town, was manager of Bradford City at the time. Terry Dolan was the assistant, and it was the time of the where you had not youth development, what do you call it, where the government paid the wages. Instead of having apprentices, you had
you were right.
YTS, that's it, the YTS. So Bradford City decided to take 15-16 players on YTS. They didn't have a full-time youth team coach, so they asked me if I'd go and join them as youth team coach. Right. And I said to Trevor, yeah, of course I will. And there was a sports centre that they built in Bradford at that time called Schoolmore, which was the first synthetic surface that they'd had in the city. And Bradford City in the winter months used to come up and train there. So Trevor knew me, and Terry Dolan knew me from playing against Leeds and Huddersfield. And every time they came up to train, I was hoping that they would have odd numbers. Because if they had an odd number, they would ask me to join in to make up even numbers. So that was my introduction to Trevor Cherry as a coach or a manager, and everything developed from there.
fell into management from that.
Yes.
So I think one of the most difficult times, or you could tell me if it was, I know that after the Bradford City fires, when you took on the management role there, didn't you? Was that difficult for you? Because obviously I can imagine obviously the fan base and the emotions that would still be even today's, but even attached so raw after that. Were it difficult for you? Because there's a lot of pressure trying to bring spirit back in again, isn't there?
Well, Trevor was still manager at the time, so it was 85. Excuse me. I'd just become youth team coach then, so I was only youth team coach at the time of the fire. And then the following year, after the team played at Odsall and Leeds Road, Terry Dolan went to Swansea, and then I moved up from youth team coach to assistant manager.
Yeah.
And then Trevor got sacked in 87, and then I was made caretaker manager.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting period, very interesting period,
Why
because
is it?
Stafford was the chairman still, Jack Todoff was the vice chairman. Stafford was not very well at the time, and he wanted me as the manager, did Stafford, because he knew me as a quiet 15, 16-year-old when I was there as an associate schoolboy. And he thought, well, we'll make Terry the manager, and he would be able to dictate things from the boardroom level. Mm-hmm. It didn't work out that way, but Stafford then, as I say, became ill. Jack Todoff got more involved. I had 3 interviews at the time that they were waiting for a new manager when Trevor got sacked.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, they know all about me, what they're waiting for. I think as it turned out, I think Jack Todoff had more say than he thought, than we thought, and he wanted Terry Orth back from Swansea. But Stafford wasn't going to have that. But eventually Stafford had to resign as chairman because of ill health, and Jack took over. When they gave me the job after my 3rd interview, I still didn't know who else was in line for the job until I saw him coming out after his interview, and it was Martin O'Neill.
Oh, all right.
And I'm thinking, when I saw Martin O'Neill come out, I'm thinking, oh, well, that's me knackered now, I'm not going to get the job. But they decided, after interviewing Martin O'Neill, that they were going to give it to me. So they didn't interview me for the 4th time.
Wow.
And they had a big oval table in the boardroom, and they opened a bottle of champagne. They said, "Here, Terry, this is to the future. Good luck." So we have a drink of champagne, and Jack was over the other side of the table, and he walked all the way around the table, stood in front of me, and he said, "Right, Terry, I'm just telling you to your face, before anybody tells you behind my back, I didn't want you to have the job."
Wow.
So I said, "All right, thanks, Jack." I said, "But I'll prove you wrong."
Yeah.
And I think over the next 2 years, I think I did prove him wrong.
Yeah.
But it was Jack's idea to try and get Terry Orth back. The reason I think they kept it going for 3 or 4 weeks, they were hoping that they could get Terry Orth back, but Swansea wanted too much compensation. So I got the job. But when I got sacked after a defeat by
How long did you get? How long was you in the job for?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. We lost in the playoffs to get into the top division.
Right.
My 2nd season there. But
And who was playing in that team at that time? To tell the Bradford City fans.
Peter Jackson, Dave Evans, Stuart McCall,
So the lads
John
who were all in
Henry.
the fire.
Yeah,
because I watched
yes,
that
yes.
documentary last night. Yeah.
Because we finished 4th, didn't we, when you had him at that time? Just missed out from automatic, right?
We missed out on automatic on the last game of the season against Ipswich.
Right.
What score was it, do you remember?
We lost 3-2, and had we drawn the game, we'd have gone up automatically.
Right.
Wow.
Isn't it funny how...
And they sacked you straight after that game?
No.
Ah.
Following season. The following season, we had to sell Stuart McCall,
Yeah.
and we had to sell John Henry
There you go, yeah.
because the contracts were up.
So
One's contract was
So
up.
Stuart to Everton.
Stuart went to Everton, John Henry went to Middlesbrough.
Right.
And
Jeez.
we got 850,000 for Stuart and $500,000 for John, because John's contract was up. So it was in those days you agreed a fee and that was it.
Yeah.
There was no.
Yeah.
Stewart's was different because he still had a year on his contract.
Yeah.
But it was hard work.
I'm going to say there's a lot of pressure in there in football management, especially with that. So, because you just never know when your job's safe or when it isn't, and obviously you have run the results. So what don't people see then, Terry, behind management, behind when the stadium's empty, it's silent, you're on your own? Like, what don't people see, fans?
Well, I mean, people know the exact reason. When I say reasons, people know what's happened at certain times. And to go back to that Ipswich game, John Hendry was sent off 2 weeks before at Man City.
So couldn't play the Ipswich game.
He was suspended for the Ipswich game. You know, one of our most
Top
important
players.
strikers.
Yeah.
So to lose him to start with didn't help. And then the following season, with Stuart and John both gone, we couldn't. Well, we had the money, but they wouldn't let me spend it. That was the problem. And again, Jack was now chairman, so he still had it in his mind that Terry Orroth was going to come back. So we played Tottenham in the FA Cup and we beat Tottenham. The following week, I used to sit up in the director's box most of the time and had a link between me and Stan Turnant, who was my assistant.
Is that your decision to sit up there?
Yeah, because
Why would you not?
I think you can get a better view of things from a
Alright.
higher perspective. Yeah. And this particular game before the Hull City game, the chairman said to me, "Terry, do you mind sitting on row B, not row A, where I would normally sit at the front? We've got some guests coming to the game."
No.
So I said, "Okay, fine, no problem, Jack."
Don't say it's Terry Dolan.
Don't say it's Terry Orroth.
Terry Orroth.
Well, he was still at Swansea, but it was Terry Orroth's wife and children.
Ah, right.
So straight away I'm thinking that's...
Yeah.
You know, once he's told me when I got the job, I didn't want you to have it.
Yeah,
I knew
Joe.
then,
Yeah.
first excuse they get.
Yeah.
So we lost to Hull City on the Saturday. Lee Paling got sent off, and on the Monday I got sacked.
No.
And 2 or 3 weeks later, Terry Orroth came back.
Do you
as
think
manager.
Do you think he made his decision to invite the family to put a bit of like pressure on and play with your head a bit?
I don't know.
From the start, he's obviously had his mindset, hasn't he?
Was Barbara at the game as well then, in the director's box, or did Barbara come to the games when you was manager?
Barbara would come to some games, but not all of them.
She wasn't at that game, no.
Did you see out that game in even when they were in row A? You stayed in row B. See out that game. Did you stay in row B, or would you not go down the touchline and just conduct the game?
No, I
from
stayed
there?
in row B.
Did you? Let him know.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
And how did you communicate with Stan then? Because
we had links between us.
Ah, did you?
Yeah.
Right.
And typical Stan, because you know, if I got something in my head that we needed to change this or change that, I'd be ringing him, you know, every sort of 30 seconds or 2 minutes. And eventually, Stan got fed up and he took his microphone away and just threw it, so he wouldn't answer anything.
I've heard a lot.
Did Stan go with you? Did he get sacked with you?
Yes. Yeah.
So did Taft bring in then, Terry Orroth? Can you remember? Or was his assistant?
Can't remember.
Can't remember.
No.
Can't believe that. God, it's fickle, isn't it? Isn't it a fickle industry?
Well,
I suppose everyone is. You know, people have the sort of knew they want and how they do it. But what I got from you, what I hear a lot about you, Terry, and Dean said this before, you were a very good man manager, I guess, with players. So what makes a good man manager as such to get the best out of players, would you say, in your opinion, from what you...
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a stupid cliche, but you want to treat people like you would want to be treated yourself.
Yeah.
Look after them as much as you can.
Would you treat every player differently once you know their personalities?
Oh yeah, you've got to. Yeah, they're not all the same, are they?
No.
But
it's funny because a lot of managers don't, do they?
Well, if they don't, then they're making mistakes, aren't they? I think.
I think that's just common sense, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You got a quiet one, you got a gobshite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, with Stan, and then when I left Bradford, I went to Rochdale, and I took Jeff Lee with me, who had worked with the juniors at Bradford City. And then when I went to Hull, I took Jeff with me. But Stan and Jeff were similar types of characters, but opposite to me. And I felt that was a good balance to have. You know, you don't want two, I wouldn't say nutcases, but you wouldn't want two people, because players would get fed up with her.
Yeah.
Did it ever leave like a sour taste in your mouth though? Like knowing that kind of towards back and you're trying to still get pushed out. Did it ever? Because it could. I suppose it could with anyone. Like it, you could go another way, couldn't you, and be pissed off with the game. Do you know what I mean? And think, do you know what? Bollocks to this. Did you ever leave any sour like taste in your mouth after Bradford with that?
Not really, no, because the only thing I thought about once I'd been sacked was, right, I need to get another job.
Yeah. What's your connection like in your communication at the time with the chairman, like with all other clubs? Are you meeting them every week or every? Because basically when Jag were on here, and he was saying like Jeffrey would try and run the whole team himself. Did you ever have that with like higher levels, or would it be your decisions?
No, it was always my decision, which is what I wanted.
Yeah. Because
at the end of the day, you live and die by your decisions.
Have you had that at every club as well? Yeah?
Yes.
But did the chairmans, like when you went home after games, did the chairmans ring you in them days, say your house phone and ever rant with you out?
No. To be fair, even Jack, to be fair, he had things in his mind, but he wouldn't discuss them with me, or he wouldn't complain to me or anything.
How would you handle the pressure, Terry? So when times got hard in the sport and knowing that your job's on the line all the time, how were you after the game? How were you handling the pressure? Because obviously, you need a salary, you need income, you got kids, right? You've got children and all these pressures that come with it. So
3 daughters, 4 sisters, 3 granddaughters.
Yeah, they're all invested. But even back then though, how would you handle that pressure of when you're having bad spells, bad runs? Would you take all that emotion home with you?
You try not to, and the first thing you do is 10 minutes after the end of the game on the Saturday, you're planning for the next week.
Right.
You're planning for the next game.
Yeah.
You never relax, but you know that's part of the job.
Would you take it personally if you lost games, or would you do like many's where you're saying, well, look, they're the players I've picked, and if you look at it for what it is and they didn't give you a shift, people still put most of it on you though, don't they, as a manager?
They do, but you have to accept that. Sometimes you think to yourself, well, I should have put him on a sub, or I should have done this, but at the end of the day, we're all in it together. We're a team, aren't we? And we live by the sword and die by the sword.
When you did get sacked, was you a sulker, or did you just get on with it, or did you like you said, do you take your work home, which you do, but when you get sacked, you're obviously fuming and you're disappointed and you think you've let your family down. Did you sulk, or did you go, right, did you go to your wife Barbara? I know Barbara really well. Is that right? I'm going to, like you said, as a footballer, I'm going to go prove him wrong. Is that what you thought every time you got sacked, or you just go, do you know what, I'm sick of this now. I'm sick of the disappointments.
No, I was never sick of it.
No.
Because it was
all
that I know, basically.
It was in you, yeah.
Football's my life.
Yeah.
Always has been and always will be.
I'll tell you what, though, it takes some mental fortitude to think like that.
Yeah.
Well, it does, but if you've been sacked, the first thing you want to do is get another job. So your mind is not, oh, well, why have they sacked me? You think to yourself, right, well, I've got to hope that somebody else has seen what I've done in my previous club and they might want me. I mean, when I left Bradford, when I left Rochdale, I was told by the Rochdale chairman that if another club came in for me, he wouldn't stand in my way. Right? I ended up coming to Hull from Rochdale, and I didn't have any qualms about the fact that I was going to go to Hull, because the chairman had said to me, we won't stand in your way. As it happened, when they did realise that another club wanted me, they ended up asking for compensation, which they eventually got.
What did they get for that? If you
they got 40,000 compensation. Because
so Hull paid 40 grand for you?
Yes. But that wasn't for me to worry about. That was up to Hull whether they wanted to do that.
Speaking of Hull, I want to fast forward into this now, and your connection, how we got there. So first question is to you. What would you say is your earliest memory that you can remember of Terry?
Well, I was working on a building site, being released at 18, been on a few trials, went to Sunderland, went to York, went abroad, went to France. My dad got me a thing in France, didn't work out, homesick. And then just started playing, like Terry said, with young kids around Hull. You know, you've got to play at the highest level in your region, and that highest level was North Ferriby. And then I was playing Sunday League football for Northwood. Then I started developing, started to grow a little bit. But obviously, Terry, you'd been there 18 months. Was it 18 months? Because I'd been out the game 18 months. And at that time, there was Lee Jenkinson, Andy Payton, Mike Smith, Neil Buckley, Les Thompson. I think Les was there. So there were 5 lads who I'd been at YTS's with, who was playing for Hull City first team.
Yeah.
So
did that give you a bit of drive? And
I was jealous.
Yeah.
Because I used to go watch games when I didn't play and go, God, that should have been me. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But obviously I didn't know the connection with Terry. I know that Terry Dolan has got the job back. Stan got sacked, did he?
Yes.
Stan got sacked. Ironically, his assistant got sacked. But you had some big hitters there, didn't you, at that time? Tell me about that, because obviously I know, that through the papers, I think you had to sell players. You had to get rid of players.
Yeah, well, the Needler family had always run the club very, very well, so spent a lot of money on developing the club. Mm. But just at that time I was appointed, they decided that the chequebook's closed, so there's no money to sign or to buy players. Mm. So because I'd done something similar at Rochdale, got players for nothing and made them basically better players, that was probably one of the things that Hull saw in appointing me as manager anyway.
So would you go down to North Ferriby and watch the games?
I didn't at that time, but our chief scout, who I took from Rochdale along with my assistant, had been watching Ferriby and had been watching Dean, and he said, you need to have a look at Windass. Mm. So I said, OK, we'll get him in. Well, we did some homework and we'd found out that Sunderland wanted to sign him, and if we didn't act quickly, Sunderland might jump in. Mm. Dennis Smith was the manager at Sunderland at the time. Mm. So I said to my chief scout, I said, look, we'll invite him in for a training session. We knew that he was working as a brickie, and we could get him in on a training session on the Monday morning. It wasn't a case of you just go and train with the reserves or wherever. I took him and put him in with the first team squad.
Wow. First year.
And after 15 minutes, or maybe 20 minutes, but very, very quickly, I said to my assistant, I said, this lad's not bad,
And that's what I'm going to ask you next, so hold that. What did you see in him that others didn't see then?
What I saw in him was, he was playing with the first team squad, right? They'd done the warm-up and everything, but then we're playing a small-sided game. And straight away, I could see that he had everything up there that none of the other players had.
Could read the game.
Oh,
even then.
Oh yeah.
But I said this: you had Lee Palin, didn't you?
Mm.
Who was an unbelievable footballer, wasn't he?
Mm.
When he was on his day, and I was training with him. The only thing that I didn't have was the fitness levels, wasn't it? Mm. I didn't have a clue, Paul.
No,
I didn't. All I did was train at Costello, and I just thought it's going to be another fly-by-night. This, I'll train for a week and he'll just say no, see you later. Mm. But I just thought, right, just go and but I didn't know this story for a number of years till he told me. And yeah, it was quite daunting. But I actually thought, I'm quite comfortable at this.
Well, I guess when you look at Rooney, and he got in heaven, I'm kind of seeing that with you. Were you like, when you got the moment, because it's kind of like the film when Saturday Comes, but you've done it the opposite way on your first session. Did you want to stand out immediately and let them know that?
I knew that my physicality started getting better for working on the sites.
Yeah.
And then obviously climbing ladders and hod carrying and
Yeah.
And I just thought, I can't remember really. I can't remember. It was a long time ago, but I actually just thought, I feel as though I am good enough. Mm. I just need a chance. I didn't think he'd give me a chance. Mm. And then you can crack on.
What I saw straight away was his football brain, was 2 moves ahead of any of the other players in that training session. Where
did you see him playing? What position were you when he first came in? What the same as where were you at North Ferriby?
Midfield.
No, he was a midfield player.
Still playing 10?
No, just in the 2 with midfield.
Right.
4-4-2.
Yeah. Did you ever see him being a striker?
Well, not initially, no, because he was going to be as good as you could get as a midfield player. Mm. But turning into a striker came by accident, basically.
Mm. But you see, the thing is, I didn't know this, but when and I didn't know this till just 5-10 minutes ago, he was a footballing centre half with a good football brain. Mm. So he's recognised that in me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And probably that's why you need a little bit of luck, and that's where I got that little bit of luck.
And it goes back to what we said about, I'm not trying to put you and Bestie
in
the same level, but you you can understand the level of a decent quality football because you've played against them. So is that what you kind of saw in Dean, in those that you've played against who made it difficult for you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And this was just a Monday morning training session.
And that's what's crazy about this story, is that you've just tipped up, you're thrown into the deep end, and then you're just out showing all pros who've been playing what? They'd have been at the club, some of them been pros for 5-10 years.
Oh, yeah.
How old would you have been at the time, Dean?
20.
20? Tell you what, it takes some balls, that.
20.
From both of you. Because imagine...
because he's getting slaughtered by supporters, and I wanted to ask him that down in the car driving, is that, he's got young girls, he's got a wife, and the club are financially not giving him any money, and then they get a little lad from Hull, from North Ferriby, going, "Oh, you're signing." Do you know what I mean? Being a local lad was a little bit easy for me, sort of thing. But he was getting slaughtered by the supporters.
So no real CV at the moment, whatever. Yeah,
and they didn't have any money to spend, so they're going, "What the fuck are we doing? Getting somebody from North Ferriby, basically."
Would you speak to Dean before games when he's starting? Because of the man management thing. What would you say to someone like Dean to get him up for the game, or when he's just starting that career? So you've signed him now. You're looking to put him in the first team. Are you telling him just go out there and play a game? What are you saying to him?
I didn't particularly need to tell him anything. I just let him go out and play.
Yeah.
And from a position point of view, as I say, we took him as a midfield player, but it was just by accident and the way things turned out with players getting injured that we moved him up to a striker. That was because we signed Steve Moran in the summer and Chris Hargreaves, right, who were going to be our two main strikers for that coming season. Chris Hargreaves broke his leg in a pre-season game. Steve Moran pulled his hamstring. So I had no strikers apart from Matty Eidson, who was a 16-year-old. So I knew he could play anywhere. He could play sweeper, he could play whatever. And I had a chat with him, and we signed a guy called Linton Brown from non-league, and we put them both together just as out of the blue as a striking partnership, and
he was lightning, wasn't he? He could catch pigeons.
And it worked.
Yeah.
But during that time, and again, it's been well documented, we had, I think it was 4 at the end of the 4 winding up orders for the club to go out of existence.
Wow.
Right? But we were lucky, and I say lucky, all right, judgment as well, but we were lucky. We got people like Alan Fettis. We paid $40,000 for Alan Fettis from Ards in Northern Ireland. We then signed Roy Carroll for nothing, right, and sold him for, what was it, 500, 600,000. Andy Payton, in the first season I was in charge, he wanted to go. Peter Swan wanted to go, so I couldn't, there's no point in keeping players that didn't want to play, but because they'd gone through a couple of seasons where they got relegated, so all of a sudden you've got a big changeover. And the fact that we got these players like Alan Fettis and Roy Carroll, and we sold Dino then eventually, that kept the club going financially. Otherwise the club wouldn't have existed. Now it's easy for me to say that, and it's difficult for supporters to understand that, but that's how it was.
The reality at the time. I tell you what's a beautiful thing is you both sat here, and I said it earlier, the butterfly effect of series events that happens to change people's lives both. Because imagine if you'd have stayed at Bradford and just gone a mazy run and management before, and you were winning titles, and who would have known if you'd have got your chance?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't even known that. It's just insane, isn't it? And this
it's
is
like there you have people on this podcast, and things happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I can't believe that was my luck.
Yeah.
Do you know? And then all of a sudden, and we speak about all the time, is that when he offered me a 2.5-year contract on, I think it was £250 a week the first year.
How did you feel at the time? What were you like?
Well, I was on £140 a week on the build site, and I tell it on the after dinner circuit. If he'd have said to me 2.5-year deal on £50 a week, I'd have signed.
Yeah.
Because we just wanted to be a footballer. Do you know? And that was the beauty of it. And then when he offered me that 2.5-year contract on that money, I'd just obviously started courting and that, and then I had Josh. He changed your life, because then he said, "Don't go back to that building site." And And that was the information stuck with me the rest of my life. And that was it then. I thought, fucking, he's give us a chance here. I'm not going to let this man down. And then fate happens that I go up front. He sees that in me in training, that I was a good finisher and left foot, right foot, heading the ball. Wish I wouldn't have fucking headed the ball now. But no, yeah, and as you said, you know, it's
butterfly effect. Yeah,
it's facts. If he didn't give me a chance, I won't be sat here doing this now.
That's what I mean. You two have a special bond. Were there any difficult conversation, or what's the most difficult conversation you had during that time?
Yeah, we did have a few.
Which can we talk about?
Yeah, go on.
Well, we had...
No, some funny ones, right? You know the one I'm going to talk about, when we went down to Bristol and then we went from there down to Torquay.
Yeah,
right.
We stayed down.
We're playing Bristol midweek, Bristol Rovers.
Yeah.
And then on the Saturday we're playing Torquay away. So we're going to go down and stay down and play the 2 games in the 3 days.
Yeah.
The Bristol game was snowed off at 5 o'clock at tea time. So we're in the hotel when we get to Torquay, because obviously it was called off about 5 o'clock. We had a bite to eat, travel there from Bristol to Torquay, get into the hotel in Torquay. Players come up to me, "Gaffer, can we have a couple of beers?"
It's not like you.
No,
it
it wasn't Dean.
No,
It was
me.
the more
He slipped for
this was
the experienced ones.
This was a more experienced group of players.
Yeah.
So I said, no. I said, it's, you know, we're training in the morning. "Oh, come on, Gaffer. We've, you know, game's off. Give us a couple of hours, etc." So I said, all right, go on then. So we decide we're all together. We're not here, there and everywhere. We're all in a group as a team. And what was the game we started to play? We were playing a game where you had to say something and then somebody else would follow on from playing that. Anyway, it gets to him, Mr. Windass, and trying to be clever, he's messing about, and the game just falls apart. So I said, "Dino," and just over the side of where we were all sat, there was like a little staircase. I said, "You see that staircase there?" I said, "Go sit on it." The naughty step. We called it the naughty step.
Yeah.
To be fair to him,
To go sit on it.
straight across and sat on it. So we're carrying on the game.
They won't let me play.
And they won't let him join in because he'd messed it up to a degree.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, this is a good 20 minutes where he's been sat on his own sulking. He went, "Gaffer, can I come back and play, please?"
Sounds like what he says to me as his manager. Oh, brilliant. Oh my gosh.
And he did end up by saying sorry.
You learnt your lesson there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Looking back, would you say, did you ever think Dean would go on to do, obviously what he did, he had a great, obviously we know about his career. Did you even believe that he could achieve something like that? Like Premier League and stuff, did you?
Yeah, oh definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's probably told you before he ended up going to Aberdeen, he thought he was going to Norwich. Martin O'Neill was manager of Norwich,
right?
And I'd been talking to Martin O'Neill, and it was a case of we've nearly got a deal done because I'd told him that we wouldn't stand in his way.
Yeah.
Anyway, the chairman of Norwich, Robert Chase, didn't want Martin O'Neill to sign him for some reason.
Right.
And Martin O'Neill fell out with Robert Chase and left, didn't he?
He resigned, yeah.
So, you know, we knew then that it wasn't going to be long before he went, and it was Roy Aitken who rang me and asked me to take him up. Yeah. Now again, this is another story. Our chairman, Martin Fish, it was again during one of the spells where we had a winding up order pending, and Martin said, "We've got Dino a flight from Humberside up to Aberdeen, but I want you to go with him." He didn't have an agent at the time. He didn't have an agent at the time or anything. He said, "Take him up and make sure that everything's sorted." And he said, "But please make sure you don't bring him back. Because he wanted the money.
Right, yeah.
So I ring him. I'd kept it quiet from him for about 2 or 3 days, and I said, listen, we're going up to Aberdeen. This was on the Thursday, and he was going to hopefully sign and play on the Saturday. I said, we're going up to Aberdeen. Roy Aitken wants to sign you up there. I said, but we're going from Humberside Airport up to Aberdeen. First thing he said was, do I need my passport?
And then you went up to Aberdeen, and that's obviously where did you put pen and paper on that first day you got there?
On the Friday afternoon.
Did you?
I was sub against Partick Thistle on the Saturday. He came to watch the game.
Wow.
Then we drove back to Hull. Didn't we? Because I had to go back because obviously I was married with Josh.
Yeah.
I went back to Hull. I went back to Darren Francis, my brother-in-law. Went to his wedding. And I went to his wedding in my Aberdeen tracksuit. I didn't have any gear. And then obviously I had to sort out a route to get back to Aberdeen. They gave me 10 free flights in my contract. But that afternoon you came to watch us, didn't you? We stayed in the hotel.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history. And then but we kept in touch ever since.
Yeah, unreal. How did you feel when he got the goal at Wembley? Like, from your perspective, what emotions were you feeling?
Just delighted that, well, obviously delighted for Dean, but also delighted that Hull City got promoted.
It's a crazy story, isn't it? Like, even his stories we know.
Yeah.
But
when you talk about goals, and he knows what I'm going to say now, people don't realise the goal he scored. When people talk about best goal you've ever seen,
well, lost it over that guy's head and volleys it. Unreal, isn't it?
Wycombe, anybody who's got YouTube, have a look at it. Wycombe Wanderers versus Hull City, and just have a look and see what you think. It's the best goal I've ever seen.
Fluked it, did he?
but we had an argument. We had an argument, and it was him again.
He said
it was again who calmed me down, because obviously I had a few run-ins with Jeff Lee, which was, which you do. Yeah. You have because like you said with him and Jeff, good cop, bad cop. Do you know what I mean? Jeff would lose his rag at players, not just me, but at players. You know what I mean? And he was like trying to calm me down at half time. And he sort of said, right, sort yourself out, blah, blah, blah. Because I did sulk a little bit. Sort yourself out, get out there and get me a goal, basically. And I did. And then Jeff Lee, fair play to him at the end of the game, he went like that. He says, I knew he proved me wrong. Because he's having a go at me, which is good management. But we clashed. But it was him who just sort of went, calm down.
But I mean, a goal like that, Dean. Do you know what I mean? Go get me a goal. You probably might have been a tapping.
Yeah.
But unbelievable.
Yeah. It was just, as you say, we had a good squad, didn't we? We had a good squad, and the good thing about it is, I want to tell the story about Martin Fish, because they were getting that much stick. The families was getting that much stick. Martin Fish was getting death threat, was he? You know that? And you imagine as a manager, and you've got young children, and you haven't got the finances to bring good players in or better players. And the manager and the chairman are getting absolute stick. And I remember I had signed on fee. He offered me another 2-year deal, and I got a 15 grand sign on fee, and I got it in instalments. And I needed some money at the time, and I went to the chairman. I says, "You couldn't lend me some money while I get my sign on fee." And Martin Fish actually signed a cheque out of his own bank account and lent me £1,000.
Oh wow!
Do you know? And I says, when my sign on fee comes back, you just take that £1,000 out me sign on fee. So. Supporters don't see all that shit what they were getting. Do you know what I mean? And because me and him was close, and I was scoring goals, and he set me up on my path, and I just thought, listen, the supporters have got an opinion because they're paying money and what have you. But his hands were tied, and Martin, because you and Martin were close, weren't you? Do you know what I mean? And then I didn't know. I can't really remember what happened after when I left. When I went to Aberdeen, I don't know what happened. I used to follow the results, and we'd speak all the time. But as a manager, as a man manager, he was brilliant, because, as you say, he knew how to deal with players, he knew how to deal with people, he knew how to calm me down. He made me play golf. That's how I started playing golf. I says, "What?" We went to Largs, and he said, "Right, you got any golf clubs?" I went, "I can't."
Could have fucking taught him better, couldn't you?
I said, I ain't got any golf clubs. I can't afford any golf. He says, "Get some golf clubs." And the reason why, he says, that because you're angry on the pitch, he says, and when you play golf, you can't get angry.
I guess
so that was a lesson.
So Terry would have been a father figure to you as well.
Well, when my dad passed away, he was a second dad to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because we kept in touch after my football career. And
And do you know what, Terry? Fair play, because many managers, you'd expect them to But I think people can always be busy in life, and from what I've heard from Dean, how he talks about it all the time, and how Ozzy and I regard, we've read it in his books and etc. So it's just nice to see that, you know, humans, like, you know what I mean, forget the football, just wanting to see each other do well and support each other and still be there. And I think that's kind of lost in game. We saw it in boxing. We've had conversations with Luke Campbell and others from their management promotion side said it's just all money oriented, just sport. You don't get this.
Yeah, but we played in the Bradford Fire thing on weekend, and you've got Stuart McCall there, who's got massive respect for Terry.
Yeah.
John Hendry used to be my advisor when I was playing as a solicitor, and the respect that he's got for Terry. You know, you see Mark Ellis, you see all the ex-Bradford City players now,
fans as well,
who highly, I mean, not just about me. This podcast isn't about me. It's because he was my manager, and he gave me that chance. But there's a lot of players, like you say, sold Stuart McCall for 850 grand to Everton. Do you know, and that's his best player at the time. Do you know, and listen, there's that many players who I speak to now when they talk about Terry in high regards, because that's the way I was as a man, not just as a manager, just as a man.
It's even like my old man when I said that we've got you on pod today. Terry Dolan, God, good lad, bloody hell. Obviously he knows that we talk anyway, he knows how close we are and stuff, but he was like, my dad would say him, he goes, tell you what a manager he was, and telling you this, that and the other. So everyone just holds you in that highest regard, and obviously that's all respect to you, Terry. Do you know what I mean? You've probably just held all your character and your morals from young, from what you discussed. It just seems like you had a passion for it and you followed that through and treat people how you want to be treated.
Well, I wasn't, let's just say, I was never flamboyant, I was never funny, but I loved the game.
Yeah.
And I still love the game. But on top of that, I've got so much backing from my wife and children and grandchildren, and that's a two-way thing anyway.
Because I was just going to say that. I was going to say, who's Terry Dolan after football? The family man, I would imagine. Family's a lot to you.
Yes, but again, because I've been involved in football all my life, it's a case of it will never go away.
Yeah.
But seeing the grandchildren grow up now, after the children as well, and my wife has had to put up with a lot of things, but she's been strong enough and a great companion.
Yeah, unreal. You're Bradford City fan still? Still go see the games?
Do I?
Yeah.
I've been to 2 or 3 this season,
yeah.
Not as many as I thought, but I'm not playing golf anymore on a Saturday, so maybe next season I can go and see 1 or 2 more.
I'm glad to see it's promoted, mate. I bet.
Well, it was great seeing it,
yeah. What's the, knowing your career in football then, what's, like, would you say you've learnt about people after all these years in football? Especially in the management role.
What have I learnt from other people?
Yeah, just what have you learnt being around people in football, like more so on the management side? Can it be ferocious, fickle, money? Because, you know, forget the players you're managing at that boardroom level. What have you learnt since being at that level in regards to the boardroom management?
I think in my time as a manager, I was probably fortunate that the boardroom level was as good as it could be. I wouldn't want to be managing in today's game, to be honest.
So having said that,
because I think there's too much importance put on the people who own the clubs. I have to say, I don't think managers are managers anymore.
No.
The coaches, the head coaches.
Would you set expectations, Terry, as a manager, going in there, like if people are putting their trust in you, would you ever say to them of what you'd expect? Because you're the one who's actually, well, you're the manager, you're managing. Whereas I feel like now, like you said, I agree, I think it's tough in it now at that level. They feel like they're the ones who are in control. Do you know what I mean? So would you lay down the expectations back in the day when you were managing?
Oh yes, very much so.
How so?
Yeah. Well, if I'm appointed as manager, they've appointed me for a reason, so let me do what they think I'm good at. And all right, you're going to lose games throughout that time, but you're not losing games deliberately. And all right, if you have a really, really bad season, then you might expect to get sacked. But I think that there's too much emphasis now put on the owners of the clubs. I have to be careful what I say here, but there are too many clubs, in my opinion, that are owned by foreign people. And there's more of a chance of the foreign owners appointing a foreign manager.
Yeah.
Which I can accept, and it wouldn't be a surprise. But before long, there's going to be fewer and fewer British managers in the game.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you there. You're not trying to, well, saying it, you're right, it's because where the money is, and it's just become money, hasn't it? It's just become a money pot where people just want to put an investment in, make money, and it can ruin the game. So would you say, what in today's world then, how do you think football is kind of, what do you think football's lost since the days when you were managing as a manager then? Is it those overheads and the pressure of those looking down? Because that's how I see it. How I see football these days, and you hear Gary Neville talk a lot about on his podcast, is that, he always talks about the higher boards, and well, obviously as fans we're not in there, we don't know the discussions, but I think that's ruining football, the money side.
I think so, but I also think managers or head coaches sometimes are not party to something that's going on behind the scenes, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
The people running the club, the money people now, might be keeping a lot of things away from the manager or the head coach. Whereas in my time, at least everybody knew what was happening and which way you were going.
Who would you say were your favourite football manager of all time then?
Well, Ian Greaves was the one that I took most notice of when he signed me at Huddersfield Town, and he basically gave me one bit of advice which I've never forgotten. And he'd known me, or he'd seen me, and people had seen me prior to that as this nice, quiet young boy who enjoyed playing football. But because I'd gone from the 4th division at Bradford Park Avenue to the 1st division at Huddersfield Town in one go, I'm thinking, bloody hell, this is a bit of a jump. So I was fairly quiet at that time, and Ian came up to me one day and he said, "Terry, just remember," he said, "it's the law of the jungle out there." And what he meant by that was, you've got to look after yourself. And if you don't, you won't survive. And that was the best advice I was ever given.
I think that goes across everything in life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I always say, it's kind of similar on those lines. You've heard me say this a lot of times. My biggest characteristic trait, believe it or not, is being selfish, but for the positive frame. When you look at the word selfish, everyone thinks the negative, or I don't mean it like that. I mean, if I know what's going to benefit both my life and my missus and my kids and those who are around me, selfish in the sense of, I know the people I want to be around, I know what I want in my life, and there's no distractions coming in, I'm going to be selfish in not listening. It's kind of what you said there. It's like, it is dog eat dog, and yeah, you're right, the law of the jungle, because we can get misguided, can't we? And we can get put on different pathways that have a negative impact. Totally agree with you. Yeah. Look, before we wrap up, I'm going to quick fire questions. I just want to say this has been, like, to me, honestly, like a magic moment. Like, just, again, I can't get my head around, and this is why I love talking about, when people say the law of attraction, the universe and all this stuff, it's just really simple, like the butterfly effect of impacts that people can have on other people's lives. Like, you might not have even been sat here, you could have been Dean Windass, the best brickie in the world, mate. Do you know what I mean? But obviously what you've got to have done, and it's just, I feel privileged to be sat in between you both and having that discussion and just listening. Do you know what I mean? Because I just think honestly, I think it's phenomenal how somebody's next season of events can impact someone else so positively too, because it ain't like you had a alright career. You know what I mean? You've gone on to do what you did, and it's good to have you both together.
Well, the thing is, we're still at it in a strange way, aren't we? With the Bradford City veterans team.
Yeah, and still being together, and do you know what I mean? And that relationship.
But the trouble is, when we do the games, it's still the same.
Well, you batted the fireman 10-2, didn't you?
I know, but the trouble is that we're in the change rooms. He still does his team talk. He still does. He's still passionate about make sure we win the game, and this is just to whatever charity we do it for. The first and foremost, he wants to win a game of football.
Yeah, and Terry's pretending he plays a false nine these days on charity football.
Well, the funny thing was, we've just had 2 games recently, the veterans team, which I inadvertently, or in inverted commas, manage.
Yeah.
And we played Lincoln City 2 weeks ago. Would you believe we got beat 10-2?
Yeah, he told me. Yeah.
But then last week, when we played the Bradford Fire Brigade, we won 10-2. So my job's safe for another week.
Yeah. See how you get on when you play at kids under sevens. Yeah. Look, honestly, Terry, it's been great. Really appreciate you giving up your time being on the podcast. As you already know, we've finished this off with quick fire questions. Dean likes to ask the first question. Go ahead.
I know you don't watch a lot of television, but you've watched I'm a Celeb, The Jungle, have you?
No.
You've never ever seen it?
I've not. Oh, I've seen.
So you've seen the finals, haven't you? So what you do if you get to the final, if you're in the jungle,
yeah,
and you get to the final, so they have a final three,
yeah,
and they have a last supper basically together. So my first question is, if you got to the final, what would your starter be? What would your main be? What would you put in, and what would you down it down with?
You can have anything.
Anything you want for your starter.
I'd have. Starter is a difficult one. It would have been prawn cocktail,
yeah.
But I'm allergic to shellfish now, so that's
gone out the window.
Out of the window. So it would have to be something like. I'm trying to think what my wife would now be saying. You know very well what you would have. I don't know. My main course would be beef stroganoff.
Right.
My pudding would be rhubarb crumble and custard.
Right.
And to drink it down with a glass of red.
Right.
Nice.
But you don't have Trevor starter, but your trouble is you've been in that jungle 8 weeks.
God knows how long.
And you're just craving some sweetness.
Maybe on a bit of jam and toast, mate. You know
no,
what I mean?
it'd probably be fruit salad.
Fruit salad.
Yeah, for a start.
Yeah.
It's what it is.
Healthy.
Yeah. Go-to karaoke song, Terry.
Oh, well, in my time, I've probably done 3 or 4 stupidly.
Yes. Which we've all done.
One was Delilah.
Yeah.
Go on then, give us a bit.
One was Sweet Caroline, which is pretty. They're all obvious ones, aren't
they? Yeah.
And what would the other one be? Well, my favourite song of all time, and I'd probably try and sing that as well now, is Billy Joel, This Night.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. You might not watch Netflix, but I'm sure you might watch telly or TV series. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. What do you watch? Like, what films are you into? Any series you watch at the moment?
On a weekly basis, myself and my wife have a contest on the quiz programmes.
Yeah, I
love
quiz. Do you like a get to know?
So on a Monday, nothing else can be done from 4:30 to 9 o'clock.
Brilliant.
Right? So 4:30 it's the finish line. 5:15 it's Pointless.
Yeah.
6 o'clock it's Richard Osman's House of Games. Then there's a half an hour break for our meal. 7:30 Mastermind. 8 o'clock Only Connect.
Wow.
8:30 University Challenge.
Wow. So
not the chase then. I thought it'd have been a chase.
No, I'm not.
Not the chase. I watched the chase. Pointless is too hard for me. That.
No, it's good. Yeah, because it makes you think.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's too hard for me.
But the problem is, again, as a contest, I've got no chance because my wife's too clever.
Yeah.
And she's a lot quicker than me.
So next time we're in pub, we'll put some money in the machine and you can sort it out for us, can't you? Get you and Missus and we'll be good. I think. Go ahead.
No, the other thing that we watch on a regular basis now and again, it keeps this ticking over. We watch Heartbeat.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the show, they've started showing that again now. I think it's on
because
ITV3.
Yeah.
Because of the music, because all the music in the background is from the 60s and 70s, and it's who sang this? And it keeps that ticking over.
Nice. I think you said it earlier. Best advice I've received is it the advice you just mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And again, tell us that.
Believe in yourself, but listen to others.
Yeah. I'm going to say here, what's a moment with Dean that still makes you laugh? What's a moment that stands out where you think about a moment you and Dean had together that still makes you laugh? You've said a few, but is there anyone in particular that you can think of?
No, the naughty step has got to be.
It's got to be the one that makes you laugh the most.
Got to be.
And then, what's something about you that nobody knows? No fan, no pundit, like something that nobody knows about you. Any hidden talents?
Well, he loves Billy Joel. I know that.
I love Billy Joel, but I think I said earlier when, in my early days as a 15, 16-year-old, just before I left school, I played badminton a lot. And between I was 15 to 16, I won the Bradford Schools Championship singles, doubles, and mixed doubles,
Wow.
all in the same year.
Did you get
the
a
same
trophy or any
summer.
medals for it? Have you got them?
Oh, yeah, I've
Have
got
you still
the-
kept all them even from back in school, like medals and trophies and stuff?
No, I didn't
No.
win that many trophies at school.
Brilliant.
But no, I love badminton.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Look,
When we used to run though,
yeah.
pre-season, he'd do the bleep test and he'd beat some of the players. And how old was you when you managed me? 1991,
41, 42.
41, 42. And you'd still do the bleep test.
Wow.
And all the lads used to be going, fucking Gaffer's got to fucking pull out in a minute because I'm blowing here. But he wouldn't. He was still fit, wasn't he? He still,
Fucking hated bleep
he'd
tests.
still joining in the games on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
He'd still play.
I couldn't time it, so I'd get there before I beat sometimes, then I think I'll pace it, and then you try to catch up with it, and it's like, you know what I mean? It
Yeah, but you get
Plays with
3
your head.
chances to get on the bleeps, and if you don't get the third one, you're off.
just
Yeah.
plays your head a bleep test, I think. Look, Terry, again, wrapping this up, we ask everyone this final question. How would you, to anyone, whether in sport, in life, what advice would you give to anyone watching, anyone listening, of how they can find their own inner greatness?
Again, believe in yourself. Don't take no for an answer. Be stubborn if needs be, just to, but believe in yourself. You know that I cannot stress that enough. I've been very, very, very lucky to have survived nearly 75 years now. So, and hopefully I've got a few more years still to come. But it's only happened because I've had good people around me. And although I keep saying believe in yourself, you've got to have people around you who you can rely on.
Brilliant. Terry Dolan, thank you very much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
Brilliant, Gaffer. Thank you.
Okay.